Hi everyone, I'm Allie with the Potomac Bead Company, and I'm going to do a little wire working with you today. This wire working can be really changed up and used in different fashions, whether or not you're using some sterling silver, silver plated, different colors. You can do that the same technique with all of those different wires. You can also use a lot of different gauges of wires to do this as well, so I'll tell you exactly what I'm going to be using to make the other earring here of my little twisted coiled drop here, and then it has that nice little curled coil curly Q at the top. This pair right here that I've done, they have some fluorite beads there in the middle, and I've actually used liver of sulfur to darken up this wire. This is a silver filled wire that was used here. I have a silver plated wire that I'm going to be used, and that's going to be the difference in the bright versus the darkened look. So you get that Bali style look when you do the liver of sulfur. And what I'm going to be doing is making these little earrings and then attaching them to my ear wire. For this, you can really use any bead and drop any bead down the center. Like I said, this one here is a fluorite, and I kept my loop a little smaller. This one here I'm doing a little bit bigger of a loop. For my beads, I am using one of our little cup flowers there, and the flower cup that I'm using is in the white blue luster color. I also have a pinch bead in the white champagne that I'm going to drop down, as well as a 3mm glass pearl in the dark gold color. The other bead that I have here is a faceted 3x5mm aquamarine bead. We have tons of gemstones in our stores, so I'm going to use some gemstones for these. A lot of times with wire, I really like the look of gemstones. You can also add seed beads and other beads with it as well, but gemstones really kind of catch my eye when I'm using wire. So I'm going to drop one of those in as well and kind of play up my little cup button shape, or the flower cup shape. Wire-wise, you're going to be using 3 head pins. And I have 3-inch head pins here. That's just because that's what I have here at home. You can also use 1-inch and just do plain coils. That's up to you. For wire other than head pins, I'm going to be using some 24 gauge. And I have 24 gauge art wire that I'm going to be using here. I also have 20 gauge wire, and you can use the German style or the art wire, or the German style bead-along wire that I have again is the 20 gauge here, and this is just what I have sitting here, so that's why I chose to use it. This is going to be used for the base as well as the curls. You can use a 20 gauge or an 18 gauge wire for this. Anything thinner than that really doesn't hold its shape very well. With the 24 gauge wire that we're going to be doing the coiling around, you can switch this up and do 21 gauge or 22 gauge half round wire, even 20 gauge half round. You could use twisted wire, anything down, to a 26 gauge wire to wrap around. You'd want to stop at about a 22 gauge wire. If you're doing 20 gauge round wire as your base, you don't want to use 20 gauge round wire on it as well. It just makes it really hard to hold as you're coiling. So again, I'm just using 24 gauge and 20 gauge wire. And I'm going to use 3 head pins to drop down from my flower cup. I have ear wires that I'm going to attach, and these are just the interchangeable lever backs. We have these in all the different metals, plated as well as sterling, so you can choose your ear allergies and what you need to use. I also am going to have a ruler nearby. This is a caliper that happens to have a ruler on it, because I'm going to want to know exactly how much wire I use so that each earring is identical in size when you're wearing them. Plier wise, I have a needle nose plier, a round nose plier, and a wire cutter. The round nose plier is going to have 2 round jaws, and that's going to really help to make our rounded figure here. In addition to the round nose, again, I have the cutters. And the wire cutters have a flat side and a V side. Flat side is always going to go closest to your project when you're making your cut. So you're going to see here on film when I'm doing cuts more of that V side, because the flat side is down towards the project, getting a nicer cut. Whether or not you use wide jaw pliers or regular needle nose pliers or bent needle nose pliers, that's up to you. You just want to make sure that they're nice and flat on the inside. If they have ridges, they're going to mark up whatever metal you're using, so you want to make sure to use flat pliers for that. I'm also working on a bead mat. It's great for wire working because it's going to catch any of the little pieces of wire that when I snip off, you don't want them kind of flying across the room. So I'm going to start my wire here with a little top there, fleur-de-lis, or that little twisted little loop design. I have a piece of wire here that I've cut. When I cut this first one, I also cut the second one. Again, you can write it down, that way you know they're the exact same size, and play around with the different sizes to get the different loop shapes. You're going to want to have a loop shape that's appropriate to your gemstone or your bead that you're dropping in the middle too. So this piece here that I'm doing the little top with is about 2.5 inches when I'm measuring it. It's right about 2.5, looking on my inches there. So to do this, I'm going to grab my round nose pliers, and my round nose pliers I'm going to hold just slightly off-centered, right towards the back of my pliers. If you want your loops to match exactly, you can take a Sharpie marker. You can see one from a different project there that I have marked, and that will be a great place to hold them so you know that your loops match in size. The wire that's being held by the round nose pliers, I'm going to bend the shorter side up, flip them in my hand, take the longer side, and bend the opposite direction. That's going to make my first little loop there. I'm going to go back in and put that loop on the bottom of my round nose pliers, so that way I have 2 pieces of wire coming out either side. The piece that's longer is going to go over the top of my round nose pliers. I'm going to take it when it becomes parallel, just like a bobby pin. I'm going to slide it off my round nose pliers and hold just that top loop with the round nose. That wire then goes down and all the way over to the right. So then I'm going to be left with my figure 8 as well as my 2 pieces of wire on each side. What I'm going to do then is go to the very end, and I'm going to grab with my round nose pliers at the very tip of that wire. I want to curl the wire over, but I don't want to see the end of that wire. I want it to be hidden. And all I'm doing is taking my round nose pliers, and you can see how I'm turning my hand here. I'm going to just show you that hand turn. And I'm going to make that first little loop. I'm going to exaggerate that loop by starting to do that coil. And then I'm going to grab my needle nose or my wide jaw flat nose pliers and just start turning my wire to get that rounded look. Pull it up and turn in. The other one I'm going to turn in the opposite direction. So this one's facing down. I want this one going up. Again, grabbing with the very end of my round nose pliers and doing a tiny little loop. Then grabbing with my needle nose pliers here and turning that tiny loop up. So I have my 2 loops on the sides. And that's going to match that one there. I'm going to stick that to the side, and I'm going to concentrate now on doing my little loop here. I'm going to take my thicker wire, so my 20 gauge wire, and I'm going to cut about 3 inches to make that loop. So I'm just going to measure out that 3-inch piece. Take my wire cutters and give a nice cut. What I'm going to do here is create a loop. That loop's going to attach to the bottom loop here, and that's going to create our little frame. I'm going to hold about the same place that I did when I was making the loops, and I'm going to round out my wire and just spin the wire around, making a loop. This wire then I'm going to coil with my 24 gauge wire. When it comes to 24 gauge wire, I want about 18 inches of wire. I like to measure on my bead mat. If you measure across your bead mat here, you're getting a little bit more than 11 inches. And I'm going to cut that wire then off my spool. So I have a long piece of wire here. That long piece of wire, I'm going to start coiling around the 20 gauge. So I have my 24 gauge wire that I'm crossing over the top of the 20 gauge, and I'm crossing that at a cross section. Holding with my left hand, I'm right-handed, I'm holding between my thumb and my forefinger or my pointer, and I'm going to start coiling. You can see I'm not coiling right at the top here because I'll be able to slide this coil and move it up and down. I did leave myself a little bit of a tail. That was something to hold onto and grab onto with my left hand and pinch. I'm going to slide that wire down close to the end. That way I don't have as far to take it around. And I'm not worrying too much about perfection of this coil, because what I can do, since it's a thin gauge, is actually push that coil together. I'm going to push that together, push it back a little bit, and start coiling more. So you're going to coil this the whole length and get rid of all this wire, pushing it back as I go and continuing to coil on. As I'm getting to the end of my coil, I am going to go back and coil that start that I was holding on to. For that, I usually flip it over so that my extra wire is coming off to the left. Go back and just uncoil the last 2 coils and then coil those pieces as well. You can, if you want to, also just cut it off, especially if you're using inexpensive art wire where you're not kind of breaking the bank to get it. I'm going to push that up and continue coiling. This wire should coil almost that whole piece of 3-inch wire, because I'm only going to want left just enough to do my loop. If you get done and you have tons of wire left over because your coils are looser than mine, just cut it off. As long as your wire looks the same from one earring to another. It's a good idea even to do these in pieces, that after you're done this one here, you're going to stick it down and pick up your next piece and do that as well, rather than having the finished product. I'm going to push those coils nice and tightly together and finish up my coil here. And I'm just going to cut off just the tiniest little bit of wire there at the end. Here at the end I can tuck this little piece down with my needle nose pliers, or I'm just going to cut it off. On the other side here, I want to make a loop that is just like the loop on this side. I'm starting to bend my wire into that rounded shape that I have my earring, and I'm going to bend that loop just like I did the other one, where I'm holding where I can't see a ton of the extra wire, and I'm creating that loop. So right now my eye pins that I've created here, those loops, are facing to the side. I'm going to go in with my wide jaw needles or pliers and just turn them so that they're facing one another. So that way they're going to sit side by side. You can even go in with your pliers and kind of give a pinch. That way they're sitting that side by side, and those loops are going to be the same size. What I'm going to do is just let this sit for a second while I get ready to add my other little fringe there, my little beads that are falling down. For that, again, I'm going to be using 3 head pins and some wire. And you can just drop down 1 bead, that's up to you. I just thought it looked nice with the 3 here. And then also because I wanted to play with the flower cups, because I really haven't gotten to do much with those at all. And I love these kind of winter white colors. All I'm going to do with the head pin is drop each of my beads down onto the head pin. And again, this is a really long head pin. This just is what I had sitting around. So you can use a 2-inch, 1-inch. It's up to you. I am going to make coiled eye pins by holding right above my bead with my round nose pliers, bending my wire back 90 degrees, holding my round nose pliers so I can see one jaw over the other, take the wire over the top of the round nose, switch from the top jaw to the bottom jaw, and take the extra wire back 90 degrees. If you need help with these coiled eye pins and then coiling the wire around, you can always check out our other YouTube videos and find the video that's on coiled eye pins. or making earrings. I go through it a little bit slower there. Holding my bead again, leaving about 1/8 of an inch, bend my pliers back 90 degrees. Wire goes over the top of those round nose pliers till it touches the bead. Switch from the top jaw to the bottom jaw. Take that extra wire back to 90 degrees so I have that loop there. Coil the extra wire around and cut it off. So I'm doing this 3 times to hang each of my little beads down. If you want, you can just do a simple eye pin that you don't need to coil it. That's up to you. But once I have all those eye pins done, I'm going to go in and I'm actually going to create an eye pin with just the scrap wire since I have extra. If you don't have extra, you can go in with your 24 gauge wire, your thinner wire, and you can create this as well. All I'm going to do is hold about 1/2 inch down on that wire scrap. Hold my wire, bend my pliers back 90 degrees so that way I have that nice little bend. I'm going to be able to see one jaw over top of the other, so your view is going to be right like this when you're looking at it. Straight piece of wire, the short one, coming straight out from your chest. Go over the top of your round nose pliers, switch from top jaw to bottom jaw, and push that extra little piece back into 90 degrees. Before I start coiling, I want to slide these beads onto my eye pin. I'm going to slide these onto the eye pin in the same exact order that I did on the previous earring. So I'm sliding on my pinch bead, then I'm sliding on my pearl, then I'm sliding on my aquamarine. A lot of times you can hold your eye pin at this point with your round nose pliers because they have a smaller little jaw there. I'm going to do 2 coils around my wire. And then I can cut that extra little bit off, or I can take those pliers and kind of pinch it down. On is going to go my flower cap here, or my flower cup, and drop it down so I have that same exact look. And above it, I'm also going to do a coiled eye pin. So I'm going to hold with my needle nose plier, or my round nose pliers, just like I was doing. Bend it back so it's coming 90 degrees. Over the top, make a loop. Switch from top jaw to bottom jaw. Before I coil, I need to link it in to the bottom of that loop. Holding with my round nose pliers, I'm going to go in and coil that extra wire around. It's a good use for scraps, especially if you have the larger head pins. And these head pins that I'm using are 22 gauge wire. But like I said, you could use any gauge that you had sitting around for this. It's not really gauge specific. Once I have that there, you could even just do an earring plain like that. But now I'm going to put on my formation here, my little frame. I'm going to open my eye pins that I created just slightly to the side. I'm going to slide it onto my loop there. Oops, wrong side. And you want your cup, your flower cup here, or whatever bead you're hanging, to be coming out the middle. So I'm going to slide this eye pin on there to the right. I'm going to close it up, and then I'm going to get ready to attach the other side one as well. Oops. If you need to, and mine keeps spinning on me and I attach to the wrong side, you can just go in and turn your eye pin so that way you're attached to the correct side. I'm going to attach this eye pin on this side, opening it up a little bit, linking on to that loop there, the bottom loop, close it up, and there I have it. And then you can play around with these, getting them to be the exact same shape. The nice thing with these lever back earrings here is all you do is slide it off, put it on, and there you have it finished. So it gives you a great look just playing around with wire. So depending on what you make, you can have nice earrings. You could even do it in a thicker gauge, going with an 18 gauge and a 22 gauge wrapping to do it as a pendant. You can attach to either side, play around with your scroll size, add beads on. There's a lot of variety that you can do and have fun making these earrings. If you check out the rest of our YouTube videos, you'll also get ideas for more things. You can also check us out at PotomacBeads.com, and we'd be happy to have you at one of our locations. We can teach you in classes as well as provide you with the materials that you need. If you can't get to one of our retail stores, we'd be happy to ship to you from our online store as well. So happy beading and happy wire working.